Okay, so here we are playing a live game, and our opponent is rated 2080, and unfortunately at the moment we've slid just under 2000, but that shouldn't be a problem. Our opponent starts with a bird's opening of f4, and I'm going to play d5. Typically the structures I like to play are with d4 and d5, and so usually with these kind of offbeat openings I will still opt for d5, trying to get a similar structure. And here I think it makes sense to play knight f6, defending my pawn in the centre, and also potentially my bishop can come out to this square and it is defended by the knight. Do I want to play that now, or do I play the bishop to f5? Probably both are fine. Maybe there is some concern with bishop g4 that my opponent could play h3. Then if I was to slide the bishop back, I could be targeted again when I move back. Eventually it could be trapped, so I think it makes more sense to play the bishop to f5, effectively playing a reverse London system. And here I will strengthen my centre and keep all of my pieces defended. On the previous move my bishop was undefended. This game is 10 minutes with no increment, so I'm going to have to potentially skim over certain things. However, in the analysis afterwards I will go through maybe more detailed justifications for each move. My opponent goes a3, which I find really surprising, that my opponent is concerned enough to include both of these moves. But nevertheless, I'll continue. What I want to do here is grab as much space sort of as I can, and so by advancing these two pawns 2 squares forward, I think that achieves that really nicely. Now I've got enough pieces to defend against any potential trade, and here I can castle. If you notice, we have pressure with our bishop towards this pawn, so soon enough I'd like to get a rook involved in this file. I think I can take this with the queen. Is the knight a little bit better to take with, maybe? It should be fine. I mean, of course my opponent can play knight e5 here, hitting the queen, but I didn't perceive that to be a massive threat. I'm now going to bring my rooks to these two files, as it seems like these are the files most likely to open up in the near future. Could I go c4 now, after maybe takes? Yeah, maybe I could. Might just play it a little bit safer though, and continue with the plan of bringing the rooks over. My opponent does try and get the knight involved. I don't think that should be a massive problem. I'll simply slide the queen over. And what I'm doing here is trying to generate some real pressure on this side of the board. Okay, so my bishop has been hit, and the pawn is defended twice, which is a nice idea for my opponent to put the knight here to prepare this. I will slide the bishop back. If this trade happens, I'm not worried. Probably the more pressing issue would be this. Okay, that's not a move I was anticipating, but it should still be fine. I can drop the knight back and try and trade these pieces and relieve some of the pressure towards my king side. Makes sense. Trying to support the knight with another piece. I could, however, pin this knight to the queen, and again kind of issue some threats towards this knight. This moves, makes sense. And again, I'd really like to trade off some of these pieces. I don't like the fact that there's a knight in my half of the board, and my opponent clearly has a lot of pressure from distance. Yeah. Can probably trade here now. And probably the knight should recapture. Yeah. Okay, maybe my knight can slide back here and come here to kind of offer another piece in defense of the king side. Unfortunately, I was never really able to execute my plan of this pressure along here, but nevertheless. Okay, let's get the knight out. Try and activate it a little bit more. It's a good move, I must admit. I'm not sure what's best to play here, however, I'm going to try and put my knight on f5, because there it threatens a lot of things, and it's somewhat difficult for it to be kicked away. Yeah, I think I can continue here. Maybe it could be stabilised with g6, although I don't want to push too many pawns in front of my king. It wouldn't surprise me if white immediately goes for e4. Likely trade there. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to trade, and at least now maybe I can have some future hope of opening up my rook. And I don't think this should be a massive problem. I now have two attackers on this pawn. I have some pressure over here. When this trade happens, which I think it probably will, I should be able to pick up this pawn at the end. And here also, my king might look unsafe, and it's not incredibly safe. You know, there are pawns kind of ready to attack. However, my opponent's king isn't exactly safe here either, so I don't think it should be too much of a cause for concern. And then on knight takes, maybe I'll play this to try and pin it to the king. Makes sense to me. Or I could give this up, so that on rook takes, I can take this. However, if I was to take, maybe this knight could take here first. Let's pin it using the queen. Pinning it using the bishop might also have been very strong. But after here, to be fair, I probably could have just traded it off. So probably moving the bishop to c5 was a better move. So what I didn't really appreciate, I missed a few things which I'll go over in the analysis, but this should still be fine. I can now apply maximum pressure towards this knight. We've got 1, 2, 3 pieces attacking it. Okay, that's fine. Let's take and take. And here the trade has to be made by white, I believe, because otherwise I will simply move my rook and this will come with check. I suppose an argument could be made for moving the king, but then maybe I just take this pawn anyway. That probably is what I'm going to do. Let's do it. And now also my queen can come here to attack the king. We're up a pawn. All the minor pieces are off the board. My opponent has a little bit more time than me. However, we both have 2 rooks and a queen. Yeah, I think that has to be a mistake by my opponent because it's too slow, it would seem. It looks like I can play this with a lot of threats, and also, you know, I'm hitting these pawns. My opponent, I suppose, is relying on some sort of action here. I mean, I can't get this rook involved, right, because my queen views it, but still I would want to leave a rook on my back rank so that it's a lot less likely my opponent will be able to deliver an easy checkmate. I'm really struggling to decide which move I really like here. I think it can't be that bad to win another pawn, so let's do that. The problem is with moving the queen here, maybe white can just move. Okay. So I can probably take once. And if I was to take another time and the queen took, then I would have check here. Maybe rook here? No, because then I would be running into this rook check. Very interesting and a tricky position. I'm not quite sure what I'm to do here, because if I play f5, which I think looks nice, then I very quickly have to contend with the issue of queen h5. I feel like I can't be in trouble. I feel like there must be some way for me to escape these issues. But at the end of the day, I need to make a move, and my time is slowly slipping away. Again, there's no increment on this game, and so I can't, rely on being given an extra 5 or 10 seconds per move. I've just kind of got to play largely on instinct. And although my king's quite open here, okay, I didn't think that my opponent would be able to properly exploit it. Okay, so here the queen hits the rook, so the rook kind of has to move, but also I threaten queen h5, and if I was able to play queen h5, then it would force the queen trade, because here I'd be forking the queen and the rook, and the king rather, and so I don't quite know how white defends all of these little issues. Again, any movement of the rook, and I'm going to play queen h5. Yeah, I think this has to be correct. And white's forced to trade. So here, I booked 3 pawns, and I should win this every day of the week. However, it always needs proving. I should always win this, however, very often I don't win this due to time pressure, I suppose. Maybe... I see the problem is if I play rook here, I worry about my opponent putting 2 rooks on the 7th rank, and rooks on the 7th rank, or respectively for me it would be the 2nd rank, known as pigs. That's usually something you don't want to allow your opponent to do cheaply. So I'm going to try and get my own pig, so to speak. The idea being now that if white was to play this, I would have checkmate. And on here, oh, that's a very, very smart move. So play this, and here, and here. I don't quite see what white plays there. Should be fine for me. Let's go for it. It's possible that I've messed this up and it'll be a draw, although I do think that this is now really difficult for white to defend against. And although, okay, so white takes here, and I'll step here. So now I'm only up 2 pawns. Check, I could move here, can I? Probably another check to follow here. And I could move, or I could block. So if I move, there might be a check here. I could come here. Okay, I'm going to try and evade these checks and rely on the fact that I've got 2 really nice rooks looking to harass the white king. And the checks continue. But now that these rooks disconnected, I'm hoping that they should be a little bit easier to take advantage of, maybe. Here I probably can't afford to move, and he takes this pawn. Probably have to block. If I can trade one of the rooks off, I'll be completely winning. It's just doing that with proper technique. Big pawn here. So that now my king can move and the rook defends these 2 pawns. Let's play the rook here to maintain pressure, like so. And again, this check I'm not particularly worried about because I'll simply sidestep. And again, if one of the rooks can be traded off, then that will make my job a whole lot easier. But there will always be an element of complexity whilst the rooks remain on the board. I wonder if I can re-establish my threats. Possibly. Because on here... Okay. And here I'm less concerned about playing the absolute best moves. I'm just trying to play moves that I think work towards taking pieces off the board. Because I know that if I can take pieces off the board, then it will be easy enough to win in 40 seconds. I think this approach makes sense. I'm effectively forking the rook and the pawn, and it's very difficult here for white to not be able to trade off. So white refuses to try and trade, and now I can win another pawn, which is nice. And here I can force these off, I believe. And if this check's given, I don't think I'm worried. Yeah. So I can trade here. Quite possibly this was a better move actually now I think of it, but it shouldn't matter. Trying to hold on to this pawn. My opponent is rightfully being stubborn, giving checks, making it as complicated as possible. And now I feel like it's up to me to try and run this pawn forward and do the most damage I can. I don't know what I would expect from my opponent here. I can probably just block like so. 25 seconds to get the job done. My opponent has a lot more time, but a lot worse of a position. Okay, and I think this rook should be stuck in the corner for the rest of the game. So I can just sort of run up here to the corner. Disregarding that second pawn. My threat is this, and it's very difficult to stop. I play it anyway. And effectively I want my king to sit behind my opponent's king so that now there are no viable checks and I can simply make a queen on the next move, which I will do. These will get traded off, and now I have to demonstrate with 15 seconds on the clock how to checkmate with a rook and a king. I don't have the time to explain this move by move, but as long as I try and not embarrass myself, it should be fine. Meanwhile, I continue to embarrass myself. My clicks to the register there, it's always very frustrating in an endgame. Five seconds, can I do it? Probably not. Ran out of time. I was very close to winning that one. And the reality is that time is just important to chess as you know the movement of the pieces, so it's always disappointing to not be able to win those games. You know, here I move my king 1 square forward. The king is cut off. Right, if my king is here, then these 3 squares in front of the king, I mean, that cuts off anyway by the rook, but the point is that if I play my king here, this king will have to move to h2, there is no other move, and then rook h7 will be checkmate. I'm currently playing on my laptop with just a touchpad, and if I had a mouse in that last 5 seconds, probably I would have won the game. But I think for all intents and purposes, I can claim victory there. So let's have a look at the game review. And this is the interesting point where the engine tells me everything I played was horrible. Okay, so I played with an 86.7% accuracy. My opponent played slightly weaker with 82.5. And I played something like a 2300, which is always a nice compliment to get from the engine. So let's start from the beginning. Yeah, my opponent started with f4, birds opening. It's very strange, this is rarely played. And it continued, I played d5, my opponent played e3. I developed my knight, my opponent did the same. And apparently I played the best move. I wonder if that would still be the case on a higher depth. And because the king is a little bit airy here, it's a little bit open, that's probably where the engine is getting a slight favourable edge for black from, to be honest. My opponent now goes for this fianchetto idea to try and activate the bishop on this long diagonal. It makes a lot of sense because when you have pawns on these 3 squares, it's going to be very difficult to get the bishop out this way, and so obviously my opponent wants to go the other way. I play e6, strengthening the centre. c5 apparently isn't the absolute best, but I personally rarely will criticise myself in the opening stages when the engine is simply saying that I'm making good moves but not the best. And if it's an opening like this, which I'm not particularly familiar in, I think that's absolutely fine. Okay, maybe taking with the queen is slightly inaccurate. Clearly the engine would have preferred I take with the knight. My worry was here is maybe something like knight here, maybe takes, and say if I try and trade this off, maybe the bishop can slide back. I don't know what I'd play here, maybe rook here. I don't know, I had some sort of visions of the queen and the bishop being able to align. You know, clearly that wasn't the case, so that's why I chose to take with the queen instead. And my opponent takes a few moves to really take advantage of my queen placement. And here, apparently the position's equal, but I must admit I did really feel under pressure here. I thought that after g4, these pawns were just going to completely roll me over. I slide the bishop back. Yeah, the next few moves are essentially centred around me trying to re-establish some sort of control and solidarity, really, on the king side. I'm not sure if solidarity can be used in that context, but you know, I meant to secure, to further solidify my king side. And then here I feel like I'm certainly in control of the game. When this knight takes... Oh, apparently my queen b6 was a great move. Okay, well, immediately afterwards I regretted not playing bishop c5. But hey ho, I can't complain about finding the best move. And then after the defense of the rook, I find it so strange that the engine would want my bishop to slide back a square. Can't think why that would be the case, because, well, yeah, I suppose. To me, I can't be harsh on myself for playing the bishop there. I think it makes sense to align as many pieces with the king as you really can. My opponent blocks, and now, after these trades, the moves I play are fine. I really liked this queen idea to hit the rook and then also offer the exchange of queens. Here my opponent clearly recognises the threat on the rook, and then I'm able to trade the queens off. And this endgame was sloppy. I mean, I didn't have loads of time. Clearly I should have just blocked there, and in fact I effectively blundered the game away. This would have just been a draw if White would have captured with g7. Of course it was a draw in the end anyway, due to my lack of endgame technique. And so is White actually better here? No, not quite, but my position would have been much better after this. I just worried that here I'm kind of getting nowhere. I mean, yeah. Interesting. So what move should I play here? F1. And after the trade, I guess you do just do this and this, maybe? No? Because then they have rook a5. Yeah, this endgame was actually a hell of a lot more complicated than... Well, I mean, I suppose I probably did realise it at the time, but... You could... This is one of those games where you could probably spend, you know, half an hour analysing, and still there'd be a lot to look at. Here I'm effectively just trying to trade pieces off. I know that if I can get this check in and I can take this down to... So here I eventually do find this kind of continuation where I'm able to win another pawn, and then this is a really nice move for me. Even if this was not the best move and there was another much stronger move, let's say, I think this is still what I would play regardless, because it forces the pieces off the board. Yeah, and then I'm able to push the pawn, and here I know that I can win the game with simply just a rook and a king. Obviously I wasn't able to demonstrate it due to the time pressures, but still I think my point stands. And so I decided to simply run my king into the corner, and then this would force the rook trade. If the rook captures, then I'm able to capture with the pawn, and after this check I can just walk my king down until it hides behind the king. And I think my dog is signalling the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you took something from this. It was certainly dramatic towards the end, and you know, hopefully hopefully you can appreciate that I effectively was able to win the game. Thank you.